Come inside my dirty mind. Let the music make you rise up. Don't be shy. This food inside. Put a needle on it. I'll tell you where I want it. Come on and spin me on it. All my freaks. This is a fan that I got when I did a gig at Camel in Huddersfield, which I actually saw the other day on like her worst places in the UK, like, you know, nightclubs. And I was like, that's not true. Camel were fab. I had a great time. I drank a lot of strawberry, like frozen daiquiri things there, and I got real drunk. You know, the jump splits were very easy that night. Hello everybody, it is me, Miss Danny Minogue. Yes, I came back to you, but I didn't sing I Begin to Wonder, mainly because I wasn't too sure on some of the words for that one. But I also wasn't sure on some of the words from Put a Needle on It. I have been listening to a lot of Danny Minogue though recently, a lot of Dazza Minogue. She's very, very good, isn't she? I'm just opening my book quickly because I've written down some notes. So today is another review of the hit BBC, I don't even know if it is a hit BBC, reality TV show I Kissed a Boy. So we're going to be reviewing episodes 3 and also 4, because it turns out I think 2 episodes come out per week on this. So my original idea that I was going to do 1 a week, that's gone out the window. So we're doing 2 a week, all right, Huns, just to make sure you know exactly where we're going with this. I don't know why I'm putting this powder on with this brush. You know, when you're just like, oh, that's a clean one. So, where did we leave off the last time then? We were left on a cliffhanger, as all great reality TV shows do. So the cliffhanger was, is Mikey going to choose Bobski or Josh? And spoiler alerts ahead and afoot. So Mikey did pick Josh. Very, very sad for Bobski. So Bobski said that he was like quite a shy boy. And I didn't really like get that, to be fair. And Danny Minogue was so lovely on this bit. So she said to him, what did she say? So she says that he's gorgeous and fun and stay who he is, which I thought were lovely. So well done. I just thought that were lovely that she kind of said, you know, don't you change who you are for anybody, because I agree with that. 100% honey. And then she were like, you know, me and you were going to get a little Cosmo and it might not be the way that you thought that this had ended or the way that you wanted it to end. And Bobski truly did mirror exactly what I thought, and he said, you know, it's even better than I'd hoped for. So they all have a little toast to Bobski, and then that's kind of that. Some of the boys like talking amongst themselves, obviously away from Mikey and Josh, and they're saying, you know, they're quite surprised really that Mikey chose Josh over Bobski, because he'd had like 3 kisses apparently with Bobski, which I thought, I mean, maybe it was 3 in total in that one instance, because I mean, I think they kissed a couple of times, so maybe that's what they were meaning by that. Because I was thinking, hang on a minute, they've had 3 different kisses, but we've only been shown one. Some of the boys are just a bit surprised by that, you know, they're a bit kind of upset really. For Bobski, I think especially, it seemed like Gareth and Bobski were quite friendly and chummy, so I think Gareth's you know, not taking it too well. Josh is obviously very, very happy to have been kept. When Mikey picked Josh went in for that kiss, and it were quite like, he like grabbed him, he were like, way, let's go. He was so excited, bless him. He's really going in for the kill there, just like LaRue did. I don't think Josh realised that there were 3 kisses, and I think Bobski mentioned that there was during the kiss off. So he was a bit, you know, kind of surprised and taken aback. So in his little confessional moment, he was saying, you know, maybe it's because I'd starved him for a kiss, but I don't think that that really is the case. I do think in this environment, the aim is to sort of get to know as many of them as possible if you're not sure on your match straight away, and that's exactly what Mikey was sort of doing. So I don't think it's Josh's fault by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I don't really think like anybody's at fault, if that makes sense. And then in a separate sort of conversation, you know, Ollie's saying that he were a bit stressed over Ben not turning around for him straight away. And they're talking about like who's a top and who's a bottom or something, and who's done what, which seems to like be a big conversation on this show. And Ollie's basically, you know, he says after tonight's fiasco, I'm going to be topping Ben, and then he were like, let's see who's got the back to who now, shall we? Which it wasn't actually a very well crafted joke, because if that is the case, I mean, it means that Ben's still got his back to Ollie, but surely it means that he wants his back to Ben. I aren't the comedy police, although I should be. For the following day, everybody gets up and they are greeted by Miss Danny Minogue once again. I don't know why I keep referring to her as Miss Danny Minogue. Her name is just Danny Minogue, although she is maybe Miss Danny Minogue. I don't know. And she says, we're gonna play a game of Yas or Pass. So this game is a way to see if people's ideas and their ethics, I guess, their morals, etc., sort of match up to one another. And we really run the gambit in this bit. So we go from, you know, is Lady Gaga a better artist than Beyonce, all the way through to would you like to get married and have children? So, you know, quite a broad yes or pass. It starts off as, oh, it's to see how well matched you are, but then actually it's just to stir a bit of shit and drama. One of the questions, or is it a question? I'm not really sure. So one of the statements, I guess, is I believe that some people are staying in couples in this villa. They call it a masseria, actually, not a villa. We're not on, what's that other one? Love Island. We're not on Love Island now. So one of the statements is, I believe that there are couples in the masseria that are staying with their partner without their heart sort of fully in it, which, I mean, I feel like everybody must be staying with the partner without their heart fully in it at the moment, because they've literally been in there for about 2 days. Some people go to pass and some people go over to yes, and, you know, drama ensues. One of the people that goes over to pass is Gareth, and that is because he feels like Mikey and Josh aren't a good coupling, and he's obviously confused still. Mikey had all the kisses with Bobski, but then chose Josh. And, you know, Josh does make a good point here. He says, you know, if you were to put yourself in my position, would you be all over sort of the partner and things? Because we have to remember, you know, this is like Josh's sort of first time being in this situation, dating, gay dating, kissing men. I was kind of surprised in a way, really, to see Gareth do that, because I think generally Gareth seems kind of quite well adjusted, and, you know, like he seems to understand humans and like different experiences quite well. So I was kind of surprised to see him do that, but then I wonder if it was mainly aimed at Mikey rather than at Josh, and then Josh kind of, you know, came back at him a bit. Another person who has gone on to the yes for people staying in couples without their heart fully in it is Ben, and he says that he feels that Ross and Joseph are staying in a couple with their heart without the heart sort of fully in it, and I found this a bit strange. So by the way, so last week I was kind of like piling on Ben a little bit, I think, and, you know, in this week's episode I don't feel like my initial concerns were really that justified. So maybe, you know, maybe I spoke a bit too soon, which is shocking, I know. But sorry, I'm so gassy today, that monster is literally killing me. From an outsider point of view anyway, it looks like Ben is kind of a little bit salty that although Ross kind of told him that he was interested in him, he's now still with Joseph. Which I was kind of like, why are you bothered? If, you know, you're not interested in him, why do you kind of feel that you have to pass comment on who he's with and things? But I do kind of see, kind of like, you know, it seems a bit tight on Joseph maybe, I don't really know. But it was quite an interesting, you know, little dynamic, and it immediately gets Ross's back up. I forgot to mention this as well, so this was actually before the Yas or Pass. I want to say Yas or Pass every time, but I'm not going to, because that's not how I say pass. So before that, Josh is sat with Ollie and Ben, and they kind of like give him a kissing tutorial, and it's very, very awkward to watch, I've got to tell you. My little insides were, you know, clenching, my bum crack were all closed up, and that's him watching them and then me watching him watching them. They're all just a bit much for me. Another thing as well, so this is a little idea for a television show. You know, if you want to nick it off me, then you can, BBC. But basically, everybody seems very enamoured with Matteo, who is like the, I don't know, maybe he like runs the masseria. He's basically like Danny's eyes and ears on the ground. And I think they should make like a Bachelor with Matteo as the Bachelor. What do we think? Anyway, so following the Yes or Pass game, I keep like flitting between things, even though I have written some notes, but apparently I'm going off but Ross, who I keep wanting to call Ben, so if I do call him Ben, I'm sorry. He's a bit perturbed about things, and they're all kind of talking about it in the little kitchenette bar sort of area, and Ollie says it's the aim of the game sort of thing to find somebody that you are attracted to, and he said, who's to say that what you think is a really strong coupling right now is going to be strong throughout the whole time? And he says, you know, if somebody came through that door who was sort of better suited for him, then maybe he would be open to it. It's one of those things, I think, that he's saying where, you know, oh, well, hypothetically, you know, why would you prevent yourself from happiness? I don't think he's actually saying, I'm not really that interested in Ben, I'm just like keeping it going with him in case somebody else comes in who is more my cup of tea. Of course, because Ross is a messy bitch. He immediately tells Ben this. Just let me get this eyebrow right, I'll be with you in 2 secs. This is the birth of one of my personal favourite lines so far from the show. It's like a confessional moment, and it's Gareth, and he's like, the gears never rest, and you know what, he's not wrong. Immediately Ben goes to Ollie to kind of see what was kind of said, and Ollie, I've actually quite liked this answer that Ollie gave him. He said, I don't know what he's talking about, maybe we should get Ross in. And I was like, go on Ollie, don't you shy away from that confrontation, good lad. Because I think, you know, he obviously, like, he knows what was said and he knows how it was said, so good for him for not sort of just being like, you know, like starting to bitch over Ross. He was like, yeah, let's get him in and let's see what the audience thinks. During this conversation, Joseph also comes in, and he kind of says, so he says that he thinks that maybe Ross got the wrong end of the stick with that conversation, and Ben says, no, I don't think he did, I think he was just trying to sort of stir some drama, which I kind of agree with Ben there. Ollie says something to the effect of, you know, I think we should all just sort of chill out, which Ben kind of takes really badly, and he kind of says like, oh, I should chill out, and Ollie's like, no, I'm saying everybody needs to chill out, and Ben kind of comes across a little bit strong here. So here is the thing with Ben. So initially I thought like maybe Ben was playing a bit of a game with Ollie, but upon further inspection, I feel like something has happened like has made him like very unable to deal with like other people's sort of shit, you know, kind of to make him maybe a little bit more defensive around folk. I don't know, maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into that, but it gives me those sort of vibes. But yeah, immediately I was kind of like, oh no, he's coming across a bit too sassy here, might get him into trouble. And spoiler alert, it surely does in a bit. Following this, Gareth and Sabonia, you know, just being very cute and like having a little cuddle on the outside decking area, and Gareth says like, right, let's go and get these bitches riled up, let's play Never Have I Ever. I don't know if you've ever played a game of Never Have I Ever with the gays. Gonna get pissed, that's for sure. Mikey decides to have a little word with Gareth, and he says, you know, that it kind of upset him that he'd said those things about him and Josh, and he was kind of just saying that something had happened to him in the past, like quite recently, that had sort of altered his perspective on life and, you know, like living it to the fullest and all that sort of business. And basically Mikey recently had testicular cancer, and he had to have one of his testicles removed, and he said, you know, that's kind of given him a bit of a new lease on life and made him kind of really think about like what he wants in life and things. It was one of those things where I was like, this is very interesting, but I'm not sure exactly how this pertains to you choosing Josh, but I guess he's probably saying he wants the best experience and he feels like he can get that with Josh. We also see Ben and Ollie, having a little word with Ross. And to be fair to Ross, you know, he didn't kind of back down. He was like, well, yeah, I just found it a bit strange and like a little bit kind of, what did he say? He basically found it to be a bit of a double standard, and that Ollie had kind of said that he was maybe open to seeing what other people sort of were all about if they did come into the Mazzarita. Yeah, so that's all a bit awkward, and then they kind of come to some sort of a resolution that, you know, it's fine, but then in the confessional, you know, Ross is saying it takes a lot more than a hug and to say that you love me and like you think I'm great for me to kind of really trust you, which I think is completely fair. As much as I do think Ross was in the wrong here, I also don't really enjoy seeing kind of two people coming to somebody and like being very like, what are you saying sort of thing. I don't know, it just felt a bit icky and awkward to me that Joseph comes over to Ross to see how he's getting on, and you know, Ross is obviously, he's kind of had it a little bit. Again, it's going back to that thing before with Joseph and Ross where Joseph is very much a reserved character, you know, he even says to Ross, I think like it's a little bit irrelevant what other people think, which is completely true. We kind of start to see them drifting a little bit. And in the little like diary room sort of confessional thing, Joe also says, you know, that very dramatic sort of people, you know, when there is a lot of drama, it sort of gives him the ick. A lot were happening this evening. Josh and Mikey are having a little chat, you know, about how quickly Josh is sort of willing to take things. And I think this is a very important conversation for them to have as a couple if they do want to kind of progress. Josh says, you know, he's not necessarily super comfortable with being very, what's the word that he uses? I think it's affectionate. Meaning, I think, you know, kind of being all over each other, like being really lovey-dovey, petting each other all the time and stuff. And they kind of decide in the end that they want to be friends at the moment and see kind of how things go, which I do think is probably the best solution for Josh. That evening as well, Ollie takes himself off, so usually I think him and Ben have been sleeping like in the same bed usually, but that night Ollie takes himself off just because he's kind of a little bit stressed with everything and kind of how maybe Ben has been around him. I don't know what I'm doing with this eye look. It looks alright from afar, but up close it looks an absolute mess. The following day we see Caleb and Jake having a little game of chess, and it's all very cute, you know. Jake says, you know, this is the first game of many and things, and it's all like, oh, it seems like, it really does feel like those two and Gareth and Sabomi have found like a genuine little like love connection, so I'm keeping everything crossed that remains, because if it doesn't, I'm going to be very disillusioned. In stark contrast to that, we then see Ollie speaking with Ben about their relationship. And Ollie is obviously, you know, he's had quite a rough night kind of thinking about it. And he tells Ben that he thinks that they would kind of be better as just friends. I kind of saw it as this anyway. It seemed like they were okay until Ben got a little bit too sassy with Ollie. And I think that really like pushed Ollie away a little bit. And sorry, I'm probably like wobbling the table. Look at that. Woo! And we also see that Joe's been having some thoughts about his compatibility maybe with Ross. He thinks that it's best that they be friends as well, because he just like isn't there for any sort of drama, you know, he doesn't enjoy it. And he says, I don't think like we'd be a good match sort of thing. And Ross does feel that Joe's sort of got him all wrong, but again, you can only really base your opinions on what you are seeing there and then. And it seems like, you know, Ross has been the centre of that drama and he's not really sort of let it go. Which, you know, if you do feel like you are being attacked, maybe you shouldn't let it go. For Joe, it seems like he's very, you know, he's just kind of like let it fly. Like it's sort of disturbing my peace kind of thing. So everybody's bloody broken up. You know, we've got Ross and Joe, they're not together anymore. We've got Ben and, who I nearly just called Paul for some reason. We've got Ben and Ollie who are no longer together. We've also kind of got Mikey and Josh that aren't really together. They're kind of just friends and seeing where it goes. Danny obviously just thinks, right, it's time for a spicy new bombshell to enter the villa. She comes out looking like Cinder Bloodyarella. She looks stunning as always, does our Danny, our big Daz. and she brings in 3 more men to the masseria, and that's how episode number 3 finishes. I'm very close to finishing this makeup and I've not even gotten on to the second one. At the start of episode number 4 of I Kissed a Boy, we are introduced to the 3 spicy bombshells that are now entering the villa slash masseria. I don't know what a masseria is. Is it the same as a villa? I think my partner might be down there making fresh pastino. That's exciting. So we have got Dan, who is a PR manager from London, but he's originally from Glasgow. And he says that he is mainly attracted to people with good vibes, which, you know, is a very broad statement, and I think it actually translates to I like all the men. Good for Dan. Then we also have CJ, who is a luxury sales consultant. I'm not sure exactly what that means. I was like, does that mean that you work in Selfridges, or does that mean that you sell yachts? Because it's quite a broad statement. He says that he doesn't really tend to tell people that he likes them, and he just expects them to know, which isn't really the attitude, is it? Like, it's always a bit awkward, that, because it's like, how can somebody be for certain that you do like them if you don't tell them? Come on, CJ, like, let's get it together, Carol. Get your shit together. We have Victor, who is a flight attendant, and he says that he doesn't believe that monogamy is sort of for him. So he's a person who has been in like non-monogamous relationships in the past, and he just doesn't, you know, he doesn't feel that that's for him. The BBC is really showing us like the many different ways that like queer people do live and like how their lives can be. Obviously, like straight people also do this, so I don't know why I'm saying like just queer people do it. But it is nice to see that, you know, they're not kind of really shying away from these sort of subjects. Danny Minogue tells them that we are going to be having a festival of love, which she lovingly refers to as Queerchella. So it's essentially meant to be like a festival. Although I'll let you in on a little secret here. When it does come to it, I don't see any musicians or singers or any sort of acts. So it's not really a festival of love, it's basically the exact same parties they had before. We do see kind of the boys all sort of breaking off and stuff. Mikey expresses that he is interested in Dan. Victor talks about his kind of past relationships and things. And his most recent relationship, he said that he was with a 55-year-old guy. And it was really funny, he says that it was a sugar daddy without the sugar. Ollie also expresses that he is interested in Mr. Dan. We've got Mikey and Ollie both interested in Dan, who is the guy from Glasgow who now lives in London, who is just interested in vibes apparently. Too broad, Dan, too broad. And then we see a little conversation with Dan and Ollie where, so Ollie says in his confessional that he recognises Dan from somewhere, and immediately we're all like, we know where you recognise him from. But then we like cut to a scene where they're all kind of in the little bar kitchenette sort of area, and Ollie asked Dan if he was like, I don't know if this is some sort of code that I don't know about. So he initially asks him if he is a doorman at a bar called Fire, or if he's a doorman somewhere in Vauxhall, which made me think like, is this code? Because what comes next makes me think maybe he was asking something in code, but like he just didn't think that Dan was getting it, so he had to be a bit more bold. He sort of covers his mic, but you can 100% still hear him because, you know, they don't skimp on the mics of the BBC. He says to him, do you go cruising? And poor old Dan, he's evidently shook. I mean, I don't know if he actually does, because, you know, maybe he's not comfortable with admitting that on television. I was just very, very surprised. So I was like, you know, earlier on I was saying, well done to the BBC for discussing different queer lifestyles, like with open relationships and things, and like non-monogamous relationships. But then I was like, oh my gosh, they were like, we're on to cruising now, what's next? Fisting. During this sort of little party, Mikey and Josh have a little heart-to-heart. Josh decides that, you know, it's his time to go home. He says in his confessional that he's only really interested in Mikey, which is quite sad because obviously when he does go home, then Mikey is kind of looking for love still in the masseria. So, you know, that ship's probably now going to sail, but he says, you know, in terms of what is best for me, I think it's time for me to go home sort of thing and just bow out. Like with many people leaving reality TV shows, if you get in there and then you realise that it's not for you, I don't think there's any harm in sort of bowing out gracefully. So good for Josh, I say. During this night as well, we also see CJ and Ross having a little flirtatiousness. Ross is very interested in CJ, and so is CJ and Ross. He says that he likes beards, and you know, Ross certainly does have a beard, so seems like they're a match made in heaven. As I said before, I was hoping for Caleb and Jake are still very much, you know, only got eyes for each other, and so is Gareth and Sabomi from what I can sort of see. This evening we also get a little bit of a flirtation between Mikey and Dan, and Mikey even decides to move his bed closer to Dan, or switch beds so that he's closer to Dan. And we again get a very funny moment out of Gareth where he's like, his bed isn't even cold. I feel like Gareth is quickly becoming the narrator of the season. Victor says, you know, he's a bit gutted that he spent his first night in the masseria and he hasn't even kissed a boy yet. Well, I forgot to mention actually, so obviously, you know, Mikey has moved his sleeping position closer to Dan, but they also had a little kiss. Ollie is obviously, you know, a bit put out about this, but we then see Dan tell Ollie, you know, that he's also interested in him. So, you know, maybe a little bit more drama might well come. During this conversation where Dan is kind of expressing his intentions towards Ollie, I was just looking at Ollie's lips the whole time, and I've got to tell you, that boy needs to put some bloody SPF on his lips. It's meant to be the day of rest, but not for me. Ollie and Dan then have a little kiss on the terrace, so, you know, Dan is moving quickly, he's getting his way around the lads that he's interested in, he's seeing what's out there. And we get a little snippet of Victor just talking at Ben, to be quite honest. He's like, so let me tell you a little bit about me. And we have another little moment with Joseph, and he's sat with Sabomi and Gareth, and he's kind of, you know, he's saying, I mean, he's not interested in Ross. He feels kind of a little bit put out because nobody that's come in is really like his type, you know, he's not particularly interested. And, you know, Gareth says to him that classic that no single person ever wants to hear, you know, that there's somebody out there for you. And you're like, well, I know that there is, but I wish that they'd fucking hurry up. After that, Dan and Mikey go on a little date, and that all seems to go very well. They're talking about like who's big spoon and who's little spoon, but I think it might be a euphemism for something else, if I'm honest. But that evening we have a little game of Prosecco Pong, I think they refer to it to, which is essentially beer pong but with Prosecco, because, you know, yeah, they like have to dare each other with things. So one of the dares is, you know, I dare you to go and suck the person that you fancy most's finger, and I dare you to go and suck the person that you like the most too. I mean, there's a lot of like appendage sucking happening. After the Prosecco Pong, they're talking about who's kind of like been with a woman like sexually, and we see them talking about Gareth's past. He did have a girlfriend that he was with for a year, and because he's from like quite a religious sort of background, he knew that he wasn't straight, but he developed a feeling for a girl, and he thought he'd kind of been fixed, which is, you know, it's just a sad moment really to like hear about his struggle like that. He seems to really understand a lot of people and like a lot of empathy for different people's situations, which I guess like you would if you yourself had come from like a more difficult situation. And yeah, it was just kind of upsetting really to hear that like he had to go through that. I mean, it's upsetting to hear that anybody has to go through that. Quite an important sort of conversation that happened there, which I did enjoy kind of seeing being tackled, although it was obviously, it's emotional and like upsetting to hear about, isn't it? The following day there is a conversation between Mikey and Dan about, you know, the gay scene and how Dan is very involved in that in London, and like, does he feel comfortable with that? As in, does Mikey feel comfortable with it? And Mikey says, you know, there's not as big of a gay scene in Liverpool, and he's not like super into it, but he says, you know, I'd love to go on like my first big gay night out with you and things, which I think kind of puts Dan's mind at rest a little bit. This must then get back to Ollie somehow. I mean, I'm presuming maybe a producer told him about this little conversation, and Ollie like takes Dan for a little drink somewhere. I don't know, I mean, it's very, very close to where everybody else is, because like Mikey's literally sat like chatting to people and he can like hear what's going on, and then Mikey's like, I'm gonna go now because I'm getting like a bit stressed about it, which, you know, fair enough, Mikey, you'll get off. I mean, I'd probably still be listening. I'd be like, what's gonna happen next? You know, Ollie's saying, no, I want to take you to Brighton, which is where Ollie's from, and like show you around, take you on a good old night out. And I mean, I don't know if this was editing or what, but he kind of says, I want to take you on a good night out and show you around Brighton. And he's like, so we'll get started. So we'll have some good tunes on, maybe sink a bottle of, and then like there's a long pause and he goes, rosé. And then that's kind of like where the night ends, from what I can tell. So I was like, and then what? Then where are you going? What's happening? What's coming next? But maybe they just cut it out. Maybe he did have like a good long storyline for him to tell him like what was coming, but it just seemed like it cut off there, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a good night out, just stay indoors and drink some rosé. I mean, to be fair, I'd love that. Ben and Victor have a little chat again, and I think like Victor is obviously aware that like he's quite full on, like he's maybe not everybody's cup of tea, and he's a bit concerned that he's maybe like pushing Ben away a little bit. However, Ben says, you know, that he's quite excited to like have his horizons sort of broadened with Vito, which is nice to hear. We hear Joseph saying that he might kind of pursue things with Ben, which is a bit out of the blue really, because I didn't think like that there was really any interest there, but you know, obviously you only see what you see with the editing. Maybe they will like find a love connection in the next episode, I'm not really sure. The end of the episode is that they all go for the kiss off, and then it's all like, oh, who's gonna pick who? Is Ollie gonna go with Dan? Is Dan gonna go with Mikey? Ooh, what's gonna happen? And then it ends on a cliffhanger once again. Just got yellow on there, so that's not great. Tonight, I do believe, so it's Sunday today, I think there's gonna be another episode, so I'm very excited to watch that, because I want to know what happens. As much as I do really like Ollie, I really, really want Mikey and Dan to become an item. So my makeup's now all done. I'm gonna go off and put on a wig and some sort of costume, and I will BRB. Okie doke, so I am back and I've got this wig on. It's really thick for some reason. I washed it recently. I don't think that I've got all of the conditioner out of there, so it does look a bit wild. It looks a bit suspicious. That was my little review of episodes 3 and 4 of I Kissed a Boy. I'm really, really enjoying this show. I'm very heavily invested, more so than I thought I would be, because it turns out that I am just a basic bitch. This bit of hair is weird, isn't it? As always, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. It would mean the world to me. And my social media will be on at the very end. It is just Dominoe official on everything. So if you want to follow me on TikTok and Instagram, that would be absolutely fabulous. I promise that like I do often look better than this. This wig is a bit of a misstep, but you know, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Maybe I'll put a little clip in it. That could help. Something needs to be done, but I'm not sure what. Oh, it's in my mouth. Oh, it's all in my mouth. Until next time, I shall see you all very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. I need a lot of